Erman.
Now you're 102 years old
102
today.
today.
What do you think about that? There's not many people who are 102 years old around.
Well, hopefully there will be more and more as time goes on. And we learn to live better, eat better food, and take better care of ourselves. We can continue for a long period of time. Nature can be very good to us. And in my instance, my mother lived to be 100 years old. So perhaps we have gained some of the good fortune from her. However, it's been a wonderful life, and a life that I have enjoyed very pleasantly because of fine children, wonderful, wonderful children that I've been blessed with all my life. And the fact that I was able to live a good life, a clean moral life, and I was a walker for many years. When we were in business on Broadway Street, it was 3.5 miles from my home in Silverman Terrace. And on the Sabbath, Saturday morning, I would walk the 3.5 miles. And in the summertime, when the day was still long, I would walk back home the 3.5 miles. 7 miles a day, and I got where it didn't bother me in the least.
What did you do for a living?
I was a merchant with B. Carp, Benjamin Carp, K-A-R-P-F. The Carp children still now are descendants from Carp.
How many kids do you have?
How many what?
Children.
I had 3. Unfortunately, I lost my oldest son during the flu epidemic in '78. But I have 3 children. I have 8 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren.
Any great-great-grandchildren?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, great-grandchildren are my son's children, and none of them yet have married. Oh yes, which we have great-grandchildren. My grandchildren, for example, are my son's children, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Their children are my grandchildren.
Right.
And their children having married and have children are my great-grandchildren.
Great-grandchildren.
That's correct.
Right.
Our great-grandchildren, that's correct. So all in all, as I said, I have 8 grand, 16 great-grand, and I'm very fortunate that they're all wonderful.
A lot has happened in your lifetime. A lot has happened. What are the things that stick out in your memory?
I don't know, did you read the notes that Allison took for me?
No.
A couple of days ago? Oh, well, at that time I outlined a number of things to her. For example, I vividly remember hearing of Teddy Roosevelt, but at that time I was too young to appreciate who he was, but I heard about him. After that, of course, as I became older, we were in Savannah 95 years. We came here in 1905. As a result of it, I remember vividly many things after I was about 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old. Then it came vividly to me. For example, the German situation with the Jewish people, the sinking of the Titanic, the different wars that we've gone through, and so forth. And there are the streetcars running on wires to gain electricity.
Where did you come from? Did you come over on a boat?
From Russia. A city in Russia by the name of Kobrin, Kobryn.
Do you remember that trip?
Yes, I remember vividly the boat trip. I do recall that, and I was only at that time, I would say probably 7 or 7.5.
Let's talk about the different wars. What do you remember about sitting at home and listening about the wars?
Well, at that time, of course, we remember everything that was in the news, and we were beginning to get the telephone, the electric lights, and then TV came along. I remember the first electric light was a hanging ball from a wire, and when we got there and lit it, we blew out the lamp, kerosene lamp. Didn't need that because we had that bulb, and that was a magnificent light. And at that time, we had a quarter meter for a gas meter. You put in 25 cents, and you got a certain amount of use of gas for whatever you required. And as 25 cents expired, you put in another quarter, etc., etc. Those are changes that went along normally and with consistency. And rapidly the telephone came along. And after the telephone came along, came the TV, etc., etc. And it was a very fast changeover that took place in those years. And we watched it. And the automobile came along, which we hadn't seen on the streets. We used bicycles. And there was a quick change of life all the way around.
What did you think of that? What did you think of the Industrial Revolution that happened?
Well, the Industrial Revolution was interesting to us, but don't forget, I was also tied up. At 14, I went to high school, and fortunately, in those years, high school, unfortunately, was not finished and completed by many students. It was like today's college students. I went through the 4 years of high school, and during the summertime, I worked at the Western Union Telegraph Company in the telegraph department when we went back to high school, and my hours were 5 to 12 midnight. After we started high school, I wanted to go back and continue working. My folks thought it was too much. I prevailed on them to let me do it. So the 4 years of high school, I worked at the Western Union, and in 2 years after I was there, I learned the Morse code and learned telegraphy, and at 17, 18 was a telegraph operator for several years. 2 years after I graduated high school, and after that, I left the Western Union and went into the merchandise business to learn how to be a merchant.
You said you remember the Titanic sinking?
I do.
What do you remember about hearing about that?
I remember the shock and the vivid portrayals and the television pictures, the, of course, constant news items and so forth. And it shocked the world. And those are the improvements that came along. We saw the streetcars changing to regular motors. We saw automobiles on the street that we hadn't seen before. And there's a vast change in industry. I was particularly tied up because for 4 years of high school, I was tied up from 5 p.m. until 12 midnight every day. And graduated high school with a very good scholarship.
You're Jewish, right? You're Jewish?
Oh, yes.
What did you lived in America during World War II and the Holocaust. What do you remember about that?
It was horrible, it was frightening, and it was sad. And it was a pity that more could not be saved. It's just a misfortune at that time that 6 million Jews perished because of this horrible, horrible tragedy. The whole world was shocked. And yet there were many Gentile people in countries that helped Jews escape and did wonderful, wonderful things to save as many of their Jewish neighbors that they could. Some at the risk of their own lives. It was a remarkable period, a period that shocked the nerves, the mentality, and the health of very fine people. It's amazing that we were able to go through that period and live the 100 years of 1999 in order to reach the year of 2000. And when I reach 2000, I will have lived in three centuries, 1800, 1900, and 2000, and the day would give me the third century.
What have you learned? There must be so many different lessons that you've learned. You must have learned a lot of lessons from watching all the different events that went on in the world. We were talking about the Holocaust.
Well, I was an avid reader. I enjoyed very much reading everything. I would say foreign children that come in and become Americanized are very hungry to learn and equalize themselves with their American friends. And as children, within 3 months, we were speaking English as nice as some of the children at that time. It was amazing because my father put us in school the very next day when we came in from Russia. Can you imagine? Without knowing how to speak one word of English. And we learn very rapidly, very fast, but children pick up very quickly. They learn fast.
What do you think of the world today?
What should I think? It's a marvelous world. We are in for many, many changes, many improvements in health, in living, in the sensible way of life, in better food, in better housing. We are today modernizing our industry where people will be able to live and survive and work in good health and in good health surroundings. And hopefully the earning capacity is increasing to the extent that better opportunities are now more available.
What kind of advice, as someone who's lived in or will be living in 3 centuries, what kind of advice would you give to someone like me or anyone out there?
Well, take anyone like yourself. You have already specialized in a commodity that is very essential and necessary today. We can't live without it. We need your services. And of course, unless there's some way where you could go into a higher field, this is a technical industry that you obviously are very much interested in and prefer in preference to something else. On the other hand, young people today are looking for new opportunities. They want to improve themselves. They want to earn more money. They want to live better. And to do that, they will have to strive and learn much more and equip themselves with the knowledge necessary to make the advancement.
And there's been so many advancements in your lifetime.
That is correct.
Is it mind-boggling for you to look back at how many years you've been around?
Not necessarily, on the contrary. I've enjoyed my life very much. As I say, I've been blessed with wonderful children. I had a very fine mother and father. My mother lived to be 100. Unfortunately, my father passed away at 50. He was a heavy smoker in Russian tobacco, and there was obviously a lot of danger in that. My mother raised 4 boys and a daughter, and we all took care of her. Until she passed away, she was always with us, some of the children. She lived with me after I got married for several years. Then she lived with my sister for a number of years. And then finally, in her very, very old age, and it was quite difficult, we had a nurse for her, and she would live 3 months with me and 3 months with my younger brother. And until the time came, she passed away at 100 years of age. But her life was good, and she made a good life for us. And we were blessed by the close relationships of a splendid family together.
At 102, do you know the secret to happiness? Have you figured that out yet?
Yes, there is some. Of course, it wouldn't mean anything to you because you're not familiar with it. But in the 100 years of 99, I have only eaten kosher food all my life. Kosher food is the cleanest and the healthiest food in existence because it is made up by specific instructions that were handed down to Moses with other specific laws. And we know certain laws that are defined where we can eat certain foods and where we are denied certain foods, number one. Secondly, I was fortunate in living a good, clean, moral life, and I always exercised and enjoyed playing golf for about 20 years. As a result of all of this, and being occupied as a merchant with my partner, Mr. Cobb, I was a busy man until I retired in 76.
How many years did you live in Savannah?
About 95, 96.
So you came right to Savannah from Russia?
Well, we actually went to, we landed in New York, and from where we met our relatives who brought us over.
Did you land at Ellis Island?
And went to Ellis Island. My father was there and took care of us. And after we met our family, we went to Florida, where he was occupied in a machine shop as a master machinist. We were there only 9 months because my mother became ill. She would not eat the food there, and she wasn't able to get kosher food that we required. As a result of it, the doctors told my father, "Your wife is going to ruin her health. You must move her somewhere where you can obtain the food that you will eat so she can live where Jewish people are." And that's how we came to Savannah.
Is there any? Go ahead.
We were recommended by different cities, Augusta, Birmingham, where my father visited, and they all told him, if you want a real nice Jewish community that's already developing, go to Savannah, Georgia, and you'll find some of your own people from Corinth, Russia there. And he did, and that's how we settled here. And that was about 95 years ago.
They tell me that we need to stop. I guess someone needs to get in here?
I don't know.
Okay. Can I get a couple shots? Can you talk to him real quick? I'm going to get some shots of him just talking to you. Is that just like right over here?
Sure.
I'll take the microphone. Go ahead.
Dad,
Yeah.
did you have anything else that you would like to add to this for Eric?
Well, yes, I do. Are you making notes on these?
Yep.
Then also it's very important that you must add, at the age of 18, I became very active. Are you listening?
Yep, I am.
I became very active in my synagogue that I attended, the Orthodox synagogue, known as B'nai B'rith Jacob. You can abbreviate it, B.B. Jacob. And for the last 17 years, I've been very happy with our rabbi of that time for the last 18 years, Rabbi Avigdor, Avigdor, Slatus, Latus, who I worked with in one of the departments known as Hevra Kadisha, that is the Society for the Last Rites, for the Burial of the Dead.
How long?
It's spelled C-H-E-V-R-A,
How long?
K-A-D-I-S-H, and I spent 50 years in that organization as an inducting officer.
How long were you married?
I was married in 1925. 1925.
And Mama passed away.
To Ruth Weiser, became Ruth Weiser Silverman. And my wife passed away in 1982.
How old was she?
At the time we married, I was 20. At the time we married, I was 27. She was 22. When she passed.
And Mama was how old when she passed away, Dad?
When she passed away,
She was 80.
She was about 80.
She was 80. You were 85.
Yes. I was 5 years older than her.
Okay. Can I talk to either of you?
Sure, why don't you talk
Okay,
about
yeah. Louis Silverman's family celebrates a landmark day.
102. When I reach 2000, I will have lived in three centuries.
This centenarian is a living history lesson. He immigrated to America from Kobrin, Russia in 1904.
I remember vividly the boat trip.
Louis remembers almost everything vividly at 102 years old. He recalls the Titanic sinking.
It shocked the world.
And both world wars. And as a member of the Jewish faith, he watched helplessly as the Holocaust unfolded in Europe.
It was a remarkable period, a period that shocked the nerves, the mentality, and the health of very fine people.
But despite the tragedy these eyes have seen, Louis remains remarkably positive.
It's a marvelous world.
I think they could take a lesson from Dad in participating actively in life, reading a lot, listening to the news, following activities, talking with people.
And Louis knows exactly what keeps his fire burning after 102 years.
I have only eaten kosher food all my life.
But it's entirely possible something else keeps Louis alive: love. 4 generations of Silverman celebrate his birthday and his 102-year legacy.
When you think of Louis Silverman, remember, I love you.
People will most likely be thinking of Louis Silverman for several years to come. Eric Erickson, WSAV News 3 reporting.
Friends and family joined Louis Silverman at his home at Buckingham South to celebrate his birthday with cake and ice cream. Silverman has lived in Savannah for 95 years. He's lived through 3 centuries, and although most people resist change, Silverman says the changes he's seen over the years have been good.
All the changes have always been for the best. Everything has been, every improvement has meant wonderful progress, more education, and better equipment, better men and better women, better jobs.
Now, Silverman has 2 children, 8 grandchildren, and 16 great-grandchildren, and still going strong, ready to go into the new millennium in about 8 days. Congratulations, Mr. Silverman.
Definitely.
And speaking